My dear students, I welcome you to this new video on climate change and related concepts. Kindly watch this video lecture up to the end so that you could understand the whole concept. Climate change means long-term shifts in temperatures as well as in weather patterns. These shifts could be either natural as a result of changes in the sun's activity or large volcanic eruptions, or these could be due to man-made activities. For example, since 1980s, human activities have been reported as the main driver of climate change, primarily due to the burning of fossil fuels like coal, oil, and gas. Burning fossil fuels generates greenhouse gas emissions that act like a blanket wrapped around the earth, trapping the sun's heat and raising temperatures. The main greenhouse gases include carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide. These gases cause climate change, and these greenhouse gases come from using gasoline for driving a car or coal for heating a building, for example. Clearing land and cutting down forests can also release carbon dioxide. Agriculture, oil, and gas operations are major sources of methane emissions. Energy, industry, transport, buildings, agriculture, and land use are among the main sectors causing greenhouse gases. Climate scientists have showed that humans are responsible for virtually all global heating over the last 200 years. Human activities like the ones that we mentioned above are causing greenhouse gases that are warming the world faster than at any time in the at least the last 2000 years. The average temperature of the Earth's surface is now about 1.1 Celsius warmer than it was in the late 80s and warmer than at any time in the last 100,000 years. The last decade, that is 2011 to 2020, was the warmest decade, and each of the last 4 decades have been warmer than any previous decade since 1850. Many people think that climate change mainly means warmer temperatures, but temperature rise is only the beginning of the story. Because the Earth is a system where everything is connected, changes in one area can influence changes in all others. The consequences of climate change now include intense droughts, water scarcity, severe fires, rising sea levels, flooding, melting polar ice, catastrophic storms, and declining biodiversity, among others. Climate change can affect our health, ability to grow food, housing, safety, and work. So people are experiencing climate change in various ways. Some of us are already more vulnerable to climate impacts, such as people living in small island nations and other developing countries. Conditions like sea level rise and saltwater intrusion have advanced to the point where whole communities have had to relocate, and protracted droughts are putting people at risk of famine. In the future, the number of people displaced by weather-related events is expected to rise. Uh, every increase in global warming matters because in a series of UN reports, thousands of scientists and government reviewers agreed that limiting global temperature rise to no more than 1.5 Celsius would help us avoid the worst climate impacts and maintain a livable climate. However, policies currently in place point to a 2.8 degree Celsius temperature rise by the end of the century, which is, very challenging and alarming. The emissions that cause climate change come from every part of the world and affect everyone, but some countries produce much more than others. The seven biggest emitters alone, China, USA, India, the European Union, Indonesia, and the Russian Federation, as well as Brazil, accounted for about half of the global greenhouse gas emissions in 2020. Everyone must take climate action, but people and countries creating more of the problem have a greater responsibility to act first. We face a huge challenge but already know many solutions. Many climate change solutions can deliver economic benefits while improving our lives and protecting the environment. We also have global frameworks and agreements to guide progress, such as the Sustainable Development Goals, that is SDGs, the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, and the Paris Agreement. Three broad categories of actions include cutting emissions, adapting to climate impacts, and financing required adjustments. Switching energy systems from fossil fuels to renewable like solar and wind energy will reduce the emissions driving climate change. But we have to act now. While a growing number of countries is committing to net zero emissions by 2050, emissions must be cut in half by 2030 to keep warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius. Achieving this means huge declines in the use of coal, oil, gas, or two-thirds of today's proven reserves of fossil fuels need to be kept in the ground by 2050 in order to prevent catastrophic levels of climate change. Adapting to climate consequences protects people, homes, businesses, livelihoods, infrastructure, and natural ecosystems. It covers current impacts and those likely in the future. Adaptation will be required everywhere but must be prioritized now for the most vulnerable people with the fewest resources to cope with the climate hazards. The rate of return can be high. Early warning systems of disaster, for instance, and property and can deliver benefits up to 10 times the initial cost. We can pay the bill now or pay dearly in the future. So there is a trade-off. Climate action requires significant financial investments by governments and businesses, but climate inaction is vastly more expensive. So we must take action now. One critical step is for industrialized countries to fulfill their commitment to provide $100 billion a year to developing countries so they can adapt and move towards greener economies. There's a question: what is the difference between weather and climate? Weather means uh, atmospheric conditions at a particular time in a particular location, including temperature, humidity, precipitation, cloudiness, wind, and visibility. Weather conditions do not happen in isolation. They have a ripple effect. The weather in one region will eventually affect the weather hundreds or thousands of kilometers away. Climate, on the other hand, is the average of weather patterns in a specific area over a long period of time, usually 30 or more years, that represents the overall state of the climate system. So it means that weather is atmospheric conditions at a particular time in a particular location, whereas climate is the average of the weather patterns in a specific area over a long period of time, maybe 30 or more years. Human activity in the industrial age and particularly during the last century is significantly changing our planet's climate through the release of harmful greenhouse gases that include carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide. Uh, green, Greenhouse gas emissions. As I mentioned earlier, greenhouse gases are gases that trap heat from the sun in our planet's atmosphere and keep it warm. Since the industrial era began, human activities have led to the release of dangerous levels of greenhouse gases that cause global warming and it further leads to climate change. The main greenhouse gases released by human activities are carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide, and fluorinated gases used for cooling and refrigeration. Carbon dioxide is a primary gas uh, resulting from human activities, particularly from burning fossil fuels. deforestation, and changing the way land is used. Our reliance on fossil fuels has led to a 50% increase in the concentrations of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere over the last 200 years. Methane is another important greenhouse gas that is responsible for 25% of the global warming, and it is released during the extraction and transport of coal, gas, and oil, and by waste, landfills, and agricultural practices. To prevent catastrophic climate change, the world's governments must work together to significantly reduce greenhouse gas emissions now and in the coming decades and keep global warming below the dangerous threshold of 1.5 degrees Celsius. So a question is, what do we mean by global warming? Global warming is an increase in the Earth's average surface temperature which occurs when the concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere increases. These gases absorb more solar radiation and trap more heat, thus causing the planet to get hotter. Burning fossil fuels, cutting down forests, and farming livestock are some human activities that release greenhouse gases and contribute to global warming. As I mentioned before, climate change refers to the long-term change in the Earth's climate that are warming the temperature, ocean, and land, that are warming the atmosphere, ocean, and land. It is affecting the balance of ecosystems that support life and biodiversity, and it impacts human health. It also causes more extreme weather events such as more intense and are frequent hurricanes, typhoons, floods, heat waves, and droughts, and leads to sea level rise and coastal erosion as a result of ocean warming, melting of glaciers, and loss of ice sheets. Climate crisis is another relevant concept which refers to the serious problems that are being caused or are likely to be caused by changes in the planet's climate, including weather extremes and natural disasters, ocean acidification and sea level rise, loss of biodiversity, food and water insecurity, health risks, economic disruption, displacement, and even violent conflict. Since the 1800s, human activities have caused the Earth's average temperature to increase by about 1.2 degrees Celsius, with more than two-thirds of this warming occurring since 1975. This is already causing significant damage to human societies and natural ecosystems in many parts of the world. More than 3 billion people live in places which are very vulnerable to the climate crisis, with lower income countries being disproportionately affected. Scientists expect that an increase beyond 1.5 degrees Celsius would begin to lead to a series of dangerous tipping points that would make many changes irreversible and pose a very serious threat to human civilization. This is why governments must act now to drastically reduce greenhouse gas emissions and chart a course for reaching net zero in the coming decades, invest in adaptation to the unavoidable impacts of climate change, and protect and restore natural ecosystems and biomass upon which the planet depends. Climate change, adaptation, and climate resilience. Even in a very positive scenarios in which we manage to significantly and swiftly cut greenhouse gas emissions, climate change will continue to impact our world for decades to come because of the energy already trapped in the system. This means widespread adaptation is needed to limit these impacts and safeguard people and nature. Climate resilience is the capacity of a community or environment to anticipate and manage climate impacts, minimize their damage, and recover and transform as needed after the initial shock. To best safeguard societal well-being, economic activity, and the environment, people, communities, and governments need to be equipped to deal with the unavoidable impacts of climate change. This can be done by training people to obtain new skills and diversify the sources of their household income, building more robust disaster response and recovery capacity, enhancing climate information and early warning systems, and working on long-term planning, among others. Climate change mitigation and adaptation. Climate change mitigation refers to any action taken by governments, businesses, or people to reduce or prevent greenhouse gas emissions or to enhance carbon sinks that remove these gases from the atmosphere. Reducing or preventing greenhouse gas emissions can be achieved by transitioning to renewable energy sources like wind and solar, using energy more efficiently, adopting low carbon or carbon free transportation modalities, promoting sustainable agriculture and land use, and changing production and consumption models and diet behaviors. Enhancing carbon sinks can also be achieved by restoring forests, wetlands, and marshlands, maintaining soil health, and protecting terrestrial and marine ecosystems. In order for mitigation actions to be successful, it is important that countries develop supportive environments through legislation, policies, and investments. Climate change adaptation refers to actions that help reduce vulnerability to the current or expected impacts of climate change, like weather extremes and natural disasters, sea level rise, biodiversity loss, and food and water insecurity, etc. Uh, Circular economy and blue economy are two other related concepts. By circular economy, we mean models of production and consumption that minimize waste and reduce pollution, promote sustainable use of natural resources, and help regenerate nature. Circular economy approaches are all around us. They can be employed in a number of different sectors, from textile to buildings and construction, and at various stages of products life cycle, including design, manufacturing, distribution, and disposal. Besides helping tackle the problem of pollution, circular economy approaches can play a critical role in solving other complex challenges such as climate change and biodiversity loss. They can help countries accelerate their transition to more resilient and lower carbon economies while also creating new green jobs. Blue economy is another concept that seeks to promote economic development, social inclusion, and the preservation or improvements of livelihoods, while at the same time ensuring environmental sustainability of the oceans and coastal areas. Blue economy and the green economy. The blue economy has diverse components, including established traditional ocean industries such as fisheries, tourism, and maritime transport, but also new and emerging activities including offshore renewable energy, aquaculture, seabed extractive activities, and marine biotechnology. A green economy, on the other hand, is an economy that aims at reducing environmental risks and ecological scarcities, and that aims for sustainable development without degrading the environment. It is closely related with ecological economics but has a more politically applied focus. My dear students, thank you very much for watching this video. Kindly subscribe to the channel and don't forget to click on the bell icon so that you can get timely notifications about my other videos that I'll upload for you. Thanks for watching. Kindly share various videos of this channel in various WhatsApp groups with your friends, with your colleagues, and with your students, so that they can also get benefit of watching these